with our beautiful new AIS sign. I and the rest of the team gifted Angela this sign because we knew that her new office was a work in progress and it was coming. So we gifted her this sign a couple of years ago at one of our team weeks. And here we are in our new office that is 99.999% finished. And our lovely office manager, Charles, was able to mount it and get it hung for us. And it's just looking beautiful. So
I actually did a little Instagram sneak peek of the office after we got the sign up. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, make sure you head over there. Same handle as my YouTube channel, Mom Mogul of 4. It is public now, so anybody and everybody who would like to, get some nice updates and photos and just kind of things going on in life and in business and all that kind of stuff, like definitely head over that direction and check it out. But today's topic, to get us started, is talking about defining and like the impacts of emotional IQ. What does that mean in today's society? And I think in today's, of course, as we sit here, of course, on social media, the impacts on a lot of people talking, I think, about emotional IQ or just sensitivity, emotions. I mean, I feel like there's like every video for some reason that comes up on my feed is like talking about relationships, it's talking about health. It's all the stuff I like to like look at and learn about and know. But there's also, I was like to like Kristen, like
algorithms.
There's so many videos about like narcissism, and I'm like, how ironic is it that I guarantee you there's countless people who do videos about narcissism that are narcissists, kind of
talking about themselves.
Ironic, but yet probably like literally what's happening. So anyway, I thought this was a great way for us to talk about emotional IQ, and we're literally I'm gonna kick it off by giving you a definition. I will also reference you back because as a part of talking about emotional IQ, we're going to talk about things like marriage. And if you haven't seen an earlier video that I did about is traditional marriage going to exist in 50 years? We've also recently did a video on mothers kind of bearing the responsibility of male evolution, right? We're the biggest influencers of helping men evolve, especially when it comes to emotional IQ. So there's definitely some context there for you if you want to go back into the archives on my YouTube channel and check out those videos and kind of bring the whole thing full circle. So I'm going to start off, like I said, by giving you the definitions. So emotional intelligence is most often defined as the ability to perceive, use, understand, manage, and handle emotions. People with high emotional intelligence can recognize their own emotions and those of others, use emotional information to guide thinking and behavior, discern between different feelings, and label them appropriately, and adjust emotions to adapt to environments. That's a lengthy definition. I got a little bit of a shorter summary, which is emotional intelligence is most often defined as the ability to perceive, use, understand, manage, and handle emotions. So it's really interesting because when we think about, emotional IQ and we tie it back to evolution, we tie it back to survival of the fittest, right? When we talk about human evolution since the beginning of time, historically, when we did talk about survival of the fittest, it was deeply tied to the physical, who was physically the strongest. And then over time, it was also attached to intelligence, just general intellect.
Basically, right? Like who can get the food and avoid death.
Right. So we went from there, and now really think about, there's a huge impact in terms of technology. The impact of technology, one is when you talk about artificial intelligence, when you talk about the AI tied to physical things, like the other day, we have a new restaurant, Japanese restaurant that had opened here, and it has a robot waiter. And so literally it's like this cute thing that just rolls the restaurant and brings, literally, you place your order on an app, and then that robot waiter gets the order. The cook that's in the kitchen, once their order is up, goes ahead and puts it on the robot, and here comes the robot rolling out with a smiley face, and you take your food and you hit the button and sends them back to the kitchen. And I gotta tell you, I mean, Chris, I don't know if you felt the same way, but like, I did not miss having a human waiter interaction in that situation whatsoever. There was not a single part of me. I didn't need, I was happy to go on an app and place an order. I was happy to not deal with a constant, is everything okay? And again, it's all in like good nature. It's especially for, you know, people who work in the service industry that are good at what they do. But nonetheless, it's a replacement. It's a replacement for the business owner of having to hire more staff. They can hire fewer people. And now I think really what's driving potentially more and more positions like that, including in customer service, let alone we've all been dealing with AI over telephones and over chat, right? The AI has been around for a long time now, and it's getting only more and more advanced. But now we're talking about like service industry based positions potentially physically being replaced by a robot or something in AI. And what's the reason for it? Well, look at what we're dealing with in today's society. Since the shutdown and certainly through it, is there's a lot of people choosing not to return to the workforce or choosing not to turn back to the profession that they're actually qualified for. So we have a massive workforce shortage across not only here in the United States, but throughout the globe. And at the end of the day, business is going to move forward, and we're going to be, you know, even if we don't want to, a lot of business owners are going to be forced to go down the direction of AI because the work still needs to get done. The job still needs to get done. The tables still need, the customers in a restaurant still need to be serviced. You know, these are things that are going to move forward. So again, just understanding the impacts of technology on what survival of the fittest is, what evolution is critical when you consider, is the question, I mean, I don't know about you, Kristen, do you feel like, you know, how much of a factor in your opinion do you think physical strength or intellect is going to mean in terms of the future evolution of human beings?
I think that the physical is the part that can be done by the artificial intelligence, right? Mm-hmm. It was nice when we went to the restaurant that they had a person available and like kind of around in case we had a question, right. But the actual bringing of the food is a very physical act. And that, like, hands down is the biggest thing that can be replaced very easily, in my opinion. I think the intelligence, the intellect, and the emotional IQ is something that a robot can't do, although they try, and it's very annoying on these automated phone systems. Yeah, I think that's for sure.
So, I mean, as we kind of talk about emotional intelligence, you know, we've got the definition that we talked about. We're talking about the impacts of technology on evolution, on, you know, survival of the fittest. Then another factor I want to talk about is, and again, I'll reference in more detail the other videos that we've done on this, but with emotional intelligence, talking about gender, right? Women, let's be real, like have gone through, if you look at the last 100 years, I'm laughing now because Kristen was like, 100 years ago, a woman was standing at the riverbank. I don't know if I'd go that far.
Maybe my centuries were a little off there.
Some countries, by the way, that's true. But for the most part, you know, 100 years ago, we have, as women, have gone through a tremendous degree of evolution. You know, there was, I mean, not too long ago, we're not even talking, you know, not even close to 100 years ago. I think it was as of 30 years ago, that women still could not own property. Here in this country, in the United States, that it was a man who had to own the property, and then if you're married, then at that point it was basically, you know, ownership through the husband. The things of the need, women's evolution has been heavily driven by getting to a point of that independence, that doing things on our own. And I truly believe at the heart of all of it has been a very high emotional intelligence. The evolution for women when it comes to emotional intelligence has just, it was an insult, I think, to say like, oh, that woman's so emotional. I don't think that that's an insult anymore. I think that that's becoming less and less of an insult. I think the insult is really around, are people emotionally accurate, right? So when we go back to that definition we just shared, it's being accurate in your emotion. If you're sad, you're sad. If you're mad, you're mad. If you're frustrated, you're frustrated. If you're happy, if you have joy, if you're overwhelmed, there's a rainbow of emotions that people experience. And are you experiencing them accurately? Are you experiencing them in a way that's accurate to the situation, to the context of the situation, to the timing? Are you someone who can express that emotion in a way that doesn't have to be violent or aggressive? Can it be expressed in a way that is with the goal of understanding? And again, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of women I know that really struggle in terms of emotional accuracy, but nonetheless are closer because of their comfort with experiencing a multitude of emotions. And really, at the end of the day, when we have all these conversations, again, we've done videos on this as well, where we talk about the struggles that are happening in relationships. A lot of those gender-based struggles are dating back to like, what is the emotional IQ of each person, each unique individual in that relationship, in that dynamic, whether it's between a husband and a wife, partners, whether it's between a mother and a daughter, whoever it's between. That emotional IQ factor is going to play a huge part in ability for them to navigate that relationship in a way that is bringing something positive, or their ability to deal with conflict. That emotional IQ is going to see them through. And certainly, most certainly, is when it comes to a professional work environment, right? Our team here, our small team, in terms of our businesses, we've dealt with a lot of like, hey, how do we elevate each person here, play to their strengths, but recognize that there is an expectation, right? That we're utilizing and practicing good emotional intelligence when we're interacting with each other. And, and holding ourselves accountable for our own behaviors. We don't control others, we control ourselves. So, all of that is things that come into play. What would you say, like, one of the things that has definitely been like a hot topic of conversation has been like the state of mental health right now here in this country, globally, because of the pandemic, because of generational things happening. Like, what's your overall take on like where we're at with the state of mental health in this country and emotional IQ?
On one hand, so if you take it back to the time that we were raised, mental health wasn't really talked about. It wasn't really addressed. Women were, it's just the birth of the women's rights movement. And from when I was being raised in the 80s, a lot of moms starting to go to work. A lot of moms starting to we now have rights, so we can vote. Obviously, that was like a few decades prior, but we can vote, we can buy homes, we can really do things ourselves. That was starting to happen in transition during my upbringing. And I think over the decades, like the 80s, 90s, 2000s, people started to struggle. Marriage relationships started to struggle because of the kind of not leveling of evolving. The women were just evolving. I won't say side by side with the men, it was mostly the women that were evolving in their roles. So a lot of relationships started to struggle. People started to pay more attention to mental health. Now, raising my own children, mental health is at the forefront of conversations. I'm very much aware of it and advocating for the emotional well-being of my children and not just meeting their basic needs. So I think the state of mental health, there's a lot more of an awareness. Pre-pandemic, there's a lot more of an awareness now than there was when I was growing up, which is great. I think it's healthy and wonderful and lovely, and I'm all about it. I think during the pandemic, everybody was forced to kind of shift the way that they were living their lives, and a lot of folks struggled. And the fact that we had so many years leading up to that where we were talking more about mental health, it was easier for people to recognize that they needed help and take advantage of the resources that are out there. I know now there's a huge shortage of therapists, and there's a huge influx of people who want to have therapy. So it's really hard right now to find a therapist, especially one who has availability anytime soon. And the now that we are all talking about it and aware of it and need it, I think we went through a huge mental health crisis during the pandemic, and we're still struggling to come out of that. A lot of people, especially as they were integrating back into the world after the shutdown, a lot of people struggled socially with their emotional IQ, quite frankly. Like, if you're stuck to yourself and you're not accountable to relationships and communicating as much as you were with the outside world as you had been, readjusting and learning how to do that, how to read a room, how to pay attention to how others are feeling and how what you're doing is impacting others. So it's huge right now.
Yeah. And I think one of the big concerns that I have at this point is I'm a Libra, so I'm all about balance and things like that. And I get very concerned when I see situations going through extremes, but I also recognize a lot of those extremes have to happen in order, like, you kind of, the pendulum, right? You swing one direction to the other to find where the new middle is. and that's certainly happened, here politically and with our government, and certainly with culturally. There's a lot of that swinging and extremism, and hopefully we're going to find, here soon, not too long, in the distant future, we'll start to find our way back to like what our middle is right now. Not what the middle was 50 years ago, but what it should be today and like forward looking.
I do feel that. I see that analogy with the pendulum swinging from where I started talking about, when it wasn't talked about at all, mental health. And now we've kind of swung. Okay, we're talking about it, we're aware of it. Oh my God, we're in a crisis. And hopefully we will level back out in the middle.
Well, and there was also like, on one hand, and I'll talk about like kind of the cuspers between late baby boomers and then early Gen Xers. And I'll say we because I'm considered Gen Xer, but we're kind of a borderline cusper to millennials as well. But in that time frame, I want to give credit to making that shift, making that change, like being the parents who were paying attention and talking about mental health, being the ones who were aware and kind of like, promoting more openness and things like that in a family. But there's also this kind of extreme side to things of the like over sheltering, the over protecting, the snowplow parenting, which was like over accommodating, like, oh, my kid doesn't like to play this team sport, and they can quit. So the idea of like sticking to something because it's not just about you, it's also about like other people in your life and who you're affecting. I also wonder, like, in the midst of all this mental crisis and mental health crisis yes, that you might be in touch with your emotions, and yes, you might be in touch with like how things affect you and how you're feeling, but is there a huge disconnect with like how you're affecting others, and like caring about how you affect others and caring about being a positive contributor to the world, not just a taker, but also a giver. And, and I worry about that because what that tells me is that's also not a high emotional IQ. Just being aware of your own emotions and how it affects you does not necessarily mean you have an emotional IQ, or high one. It means the emotional IQ, as we read, is like really being aware of you and your emotions and others, basically having some self-control over your emotions, identifying like what's the appropriate timing. All of those things come into play with emotional IQ. And so in the midst of this extremism, really what I'm seeing is you've got one extreme, which is like nobody talks about anything and you're just like hiding and you're internalizing everything and nobody's talking about it. And then you've got the other extreme where like everybody's like extremely in touch with their own emotions. But the pendulum to me lands in a place of actual high emotional IQ, where we're talking, we're conscious to others, we're conscious to ourselves, we care, we're practicing self-control, we're emotionally accurate. Those are the things that we're talking about. So the last kind of point is talking, and again, tying back to traditional marriage and how I continue to question whether, it's the norm. I'll put it that way. Is it going to be the norm in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? And the reason that I say that is because at the end of the day, if women are in a position where there's not a need to be financially supported or have their basic needs in their life met by a man, and they can do all of those things for themselves and do them successfully, even including like having children on their own and raising children on their own, what is it going to be that drives like men and women or any couple from any gender for that matter to be together? And really what that's going to have to be, like it or not, is going to be people's emotional needs being met. The attention that makes you feel good and brings happiness to your life that you're getting from somebody who you want that particular type of attention from. And being able to continue and maintain that in a way to recognize that, hey, look, y'all, if we keep it real and we're talking about marriage, where children and parents should be theoretically a form of unconditional love, that's not what marriage is. Marriage is not a form of unconditional love. There are very real conditions. People have different conditions and different limits to what they will endure in a relationship. And so the reality is like love is conditional in a relationship, right? In a chosen relationship. And so when we keep all of those factors in mind, is the need there? It's not like it was in years past. Two, what is really needed? What's the form of currency in a relationship is attention and receiving the attention and the care and the emotional support that you need from another person in order to be in that relationship with them. And so that's the second part of it. And if you take those factors into play, you throw in the technology piece that we just talked about, which means that the need for the physical, I mean, when I say physical, AI can replace a lot of physical needs, right? So it's all kinds of physical needs.
What do you mean by that, Angela?
I mean that it can also replace certain things that are happening between two people who like to share their emotions in a physical way, can also be potentially replaced. Yes? Yes?
We'll do another live on that.
Okay, well, yeah, it's a topic for another day. But you take all of that, you take the states of mental health, you take all of these, parenting, all of these factors, and really what it boils down to is what is the survival of the fittest? What is the survival of the fittest in today's terms? What is it going to mean in the future? And I think the really scary part about it is, guys, take a hard look at what's happening with the suicide rate. Take a hard look at shootings, killings, the violence that's certainly happening in this country, gun violence specifically here in this world, war violence in other parts of the world. The survival of the fittest is it's not going to be a matter of, hey, you can't eat because you're not strong enough to go out and get your own food. It's not going to be a matter of, you don't have your basic needs like shelter or health or safety being met because you're not smart enough to do that. It's going to come down to, do you have the emotional IQ to navigate life, to navigate relationships, to navigate your work, to navigate your parenting, and be able to not put yourself in a state of mental health that you're either literally killing other people or literally killing yourself. And that's a really, when I had this whole kind of thought process and I was thinking about these things, it was really kind of whoa, that's a whole, how often do we as human beings and as a species think about that? Think about how that's evolved and how that's changed. And are we, for ourselves individually, are we doing what we need to do to continue to build on that emotional IQ and the emotional intelligence? Are we equipped, are we preparing and teaching our children as future generations to have high emotional IQ? Girls and boys alike, right? So I kind of challenge all of you to think about this topic. It's something I definitely think about. It's something I definitely challenge myself to as a business owner, as a business partner, certainly as a wife and as a mother and as a friend and a daughter, all the things that are really important to me to be in my life. I know it's something Chris and I, in the many facets of our relationship, we often process together and have challenging, we challenge each other a lot, right? We call each other out, and we call each other out even when we're not practicing good emotional intelligence with one another. So I hope that you're doing that for yourself. I hope you're doing that for the people you love and you care about. I hope they're doing that for you. And I hope that you're someone who you and many of your generations to come will see surviving and being the fittest in terms of emotional IQ. Thank y'all. Thanks for watching. And like I've said many times before, if you don't already follow me on my YouTube channel or on my Instagram, please do so. Help me out here in terms of the good work that's being done across all the different aspects of our life. And that's going to be the handle, of course, Mom Mogul of 4, both on YouTube as well as on Instagram. Subscribe, follow, ring the notifications, comment, and if you like it, like this video. If you don't, that's okay too. But anything that you can do to support me out there, I greatly appreciate. But I look forward to seeing you in the next video.
Bye, guys.
Bye.